The next day, sister-in-law would send the children to give water or tea silently. Then next day, Yuyan helps the elder brother to carry loads into warehouse. Then the gang boys help Yushan's sister's newborn baby by making funny faces to stop the little girl baby from crying. Their father slowly accept that Yuyan really focus on improving himself, and his son trust he will become successful in future. Father thinks he will wait and see. During the exam time, everyone feels fear, but with determination, they write the exam, and when results came, everyone was so joyful and happy. Only Yuchen and Yuyan look at each other, knowing they will be separated to follow the different paths starting now.
The departure came quietly. No grand farewell, no promises spoken aloud, just a morning wrapped in pale light, when Shen Yuchen packed his few belongings with steady hands, his expression calm in a way that hid everything beneath it. "I'll go first," he said. Su Yan stood in the courtyard, arms at his sides, gaze fixed on him. "I'll follow," he replied. Yuchen nodded once. It was enough. Then on the train station, Yuchen turned toward Su Yan one last time and left. And Su Yan walked in different directions. The city was nothing like the village. It was louder, colder, unforgiving. For Shen Yuchen, the university gates were not just an entrance, they were a battlefield. He stepped into lecture halls filled with sharp eyes and sharper minds, where most students came from backgrounds far stronger than his. Their clothes were cleaner, their words smoother, their confidence effortless. And among them, male gurs were rare. Rarer still, those who aimed for the top. "Are you really a gur?" someone whispered, not even bothering to lower their voice properly. "He studies like that. Must be trying too hard." Yuchen didn't respond. He never did. Days turned into nights. Nights turned into endless study. His room was small, cold, barely lit. Meals were irregular. Sleep was a luxury he learned to abandon. His fingers often cramped from writing. His eyes burned from reading under dim light. But he didn't stop, because he knew if he slowed down even once, the world would push him back. Far away, Su Yan's world was no easier. Books didn't make sense, not the way they did for Yuchen. No matter how hard he stared at them, the words refused to settle. The exams they passed were only the beginning. "This isn't working," one of his men groaned, throwing his book aside. "I'd rather fight 10 people than read this again." "Shut up," Su Yan muttered, though his own frustration was clear. He tried, again and again, but the truth was, this path wasn't his. One night, "We need another way," he said. The room fell quiet. "What do we have?" he continued. "Strength, time, people. Then, we start something." And so they did. It began small, buying and selling goods, carrying loads, taking jobs others didn't want. They were cheated, more than once, given less pay, pushed aside, mocked. Village trash trying to do business, knew your place. Fights nearly broke out, but they didn't make it physical, because Su Yan pulled them back. "Not here," he said. "Not like this." They learned, slowly, very painfully, how to bargain, how to calculate, how to read people instead of books. There were times when hunger returned, when exhaustion made even standing feel difficult. But Su Yan never stopped, because somewhere, far away, someone was moving forward, and he refused to be left behind. Seasons changed, and math. Letters were rare, meetings, even rare. Sometimes, in the quietest moments, Yuchen would pause while studying, and gaze drifting slightly, as if remembering something. Someone. And somewhere else, Su Yan would stand at the edge of a busy street, watching the city light flicker. Both walking different paths, both struggling, both changing, but moving toward the same place. After a few years, they both hear about each other's success in the newspaper, and decided it's time to meet again. They meet in train station again, just when they wanted to hug each other. The night before the wedding did not arrive with celebration, but with a quiet unease that lingered in Shen Yuchen's chest like a shadow he could not name. And though the courtyard was filled with preparations, laughter, and the soft glow of lanterns swaying in the wind, he found himself unable to settle, as if some distant memory was trying to claw its way back into the present. And before he could understand it, the world around him shifted abruptly, the carriage he had taken never reaching its destination, the road growing unfamiliar, the air turning cold. And when he opened his eyes again, he found himself bound inside a dimly lit room, the smell of damp wood and something metallic thick in the air, his wrists tied tightly, his body heavy, yet his mind frighteningly clear, as footsteps echoed slowly toward him, unhurried and deliberate. And when the door creaked open, Shen Liang stepped inside with the same composed elegance he had always worn, though now it felt like nothing more than a carefully polished mask, hiding something rotten beneath. Followed closely by Lu Mingzi, whose gentle expression no longer concealed the darkness in his eyes, but instead revealed it fully, openly, as if he had grown tired of pretending. And for a long moment none of them spoke, the silence stretching between them like a blade, until Shen Liang finally smiled, a soft, almost affectionate curve of his lips that made Yuchen's stomach twist, and said quietly that everything had come full circle, that once again Yuchen had found himself exactly where he belonged, trapped, alone, and at their mercy. Yuchen did not struggle, nor did he waste his breath on anger, because he had lived this kind of moment before, had tasted betrayal and helplessness so deeply that it no longer held the same power over him. And yet, as Shen Liang stepped closer and began speaking, recounting his grievances with a calm that bordered on cruelty, the past began to rise within Yuchen's mind, unbidden and unstoppable. And suddenly he was no longer in that room, but back in another time, another life, standing at the edge of a dusty village road where everything had first begun to fall apart, when he had still been naive enough to believe that truth alone could protect him, when he had not yet understood how easily people could twist it into something unrecognizable. He remembered the night he had been tricked, the bitter taste of alcohol forced upon him by smiling faces that hid malicious intent, The way his vision had blurred as laughter echoed around him, and then the suffocating darkness of being locked away, the panic that clawed at his chest when he realized he had been set up, and the overwhelming dread that followed when the door opened, not to release him but to expose him, to drag him into the center of a storm he had never chosen. And he remembered with painful clarity how he had lashed out in desperation, how he had pointed at Su-Yan and accused him in a moment of fear and confusion, believing that if he did not speak first he would be crushed entirely. And that single moment, that single decision, had shattered everything. Because the villagers had not questioned him, had not sought the truth, but instead had turned on Su-Yan with a brutality that left no room for mercy. And he could still see it, the way Su-Yan had been beaten to the ground, blood staining the earth, his body breaking under blows that should never have been his to bear, and the way those eyes, once fierce and unyielding, had hardened into something cold and distant when they looked at Yuchen again. But even that had not been the end, because after Su-Yan fell, Yuchen had not been spared. The accusations twisting back onto him, his reputation destroyed beyond repair, his chances at the examination stolen as if they had never existed. And he had stood outside the examination hall with trembling hands and a hollow chest while others walked past him without a second glance, their futures intact while his crumbled into dust. And when he had tried to seek justice, to return to the family that had raised him and begged them to listen, to see him not as a burden but as the son they had once claimed to love, he found nothing but closed doors and cold silence, his voice breaking as he pleaded in the rain, his hands pressed against wood that never opened, while inside, the people he had trusted most chose not to hear him, chose not to see him. And in that moment something inside him had shattered completely, leaving behind only emptiness. The memory shifted again, darker now, heavier, as he recalled the nights that followed, when survival itself became a struggle, when hunger gnawed at him and exhaustion weighed him down, when even walking through the village meant enduring whispers and mockery, until one night he had been cornered by a group of men, their intentions clear in the way they closed in around him, their laughter echoing in the narrow space as he backed away with nowhere left to go. And just when he thought it could not become worse, Shen Liang had appeared once more, standing just beyond the reach of danger, untouched, immaculate, watching everything unfold with quiet satisfaction. And it was then that he had finally revealed the truth, speaking with calm certainty about the baby swap, about the life that had never truly belonged to Yuchen, about the careful plans that had led him to this point. And as those words sank in, as the last fragment of hope crumbled away, the men had moved forward, and the pain that followed had been unbearable, overwhelming, until even that faded into nothingness, leaving only darkness behind. When Yuchen's eyes unlit again, the present returned sharply, the cold room, the restrained body, the two figures standing before him, and for a moment there was silence, heavy and suffocating, before Shen Liang laughed softly, as if amused by the memories he had just forced Yuchen to relive. But before he could speak again, a sudden crash shattered the stillness, the door bursting open with such force that it struck the wall, splintering wood and sending dust into the air. And through the haze stepped Su-Yan, his presence like a storm contained within a single body, his eyes blazing with a fury that needed no words. And behind him came the familiar figures of his men, no longer the aimless group they once had been, but something sharper, more disciplined, their movements quick and decisive as they moved to neutralize every threat in the room. What followed was swift and brutal, leaving no room for hesitation or mercy, because this time there would be no misunderstanding, no misplaced blame, only a clear and unwavering resolve to end what had once destroyed them. And when it was over, when the room fell silent once more, Su-Yan crossed the distance between them and cut the ropes binding Yuchen's wrist with careful hands that contrasted sharply with the violence that had just occurred, his voice low as he asked if he was hurt. And Yuchen, looking at him, truly looking, felt something steady settle within him as he shook his head, knowing that this time he was not alone.
The aftermath did not pass quietly, because the truth, once revealed, could no longer be hidden. And when his adoptive parents came, their faces filled with a mixture of fear and desperation, they spoke not of justice, but of silence, urging him not to involve the authorities, to let the matter end here, for the sake of what remained of their family. But Yuchen listened without yielding, his expression calm yet unyielding, as he told them that there had been a time when he had begged for their belief and received none, when he had stood alone against accusations and they had chosen to turn away, and that now, when the truth was undeniable, he would not do the same, because justice was not something to be buried for convenience. And though their expressions faltered, though their voices softened into pleas, his decision did not change, and for the first time he walked away not as someone cast out, but as someone who had chosen his own path. The wedding that followed was no longer shadowed by doubt, but illuminated by a quiet certainty that had been forged through everything they had endured. And when Su-Yan stood beside him, their hands joined before family and friends, there was no need for grand declarations, because everything that mattered had already been proven in the moments where it would have been easier to turn away, and they had not. And the laughter that filled the courtyard, the warmth of those gathered around them,
all felt real in a way that Yuchen had once believed impossible. Time moved forward, as it always did, but now it carried with it something gentler, something steady. And when the news of his pregnancy came, it was met not with fear, but with joy, with Xu Yan's initial shock quickly turning into a comical overprotectiveness that had everyone laughing as he hovered constantly, insisting on precautions that were not always necessary. And though Yuchen occasionally reminded him that he was not as fragile as Xu Yan seemed to believe, there was a quiet comfort in that care, in the way it reflected everything they had built together. When the day finally arrived, it came with a familiar tension, the hours stretching long as pain ebbed and surged, as the world outside the room seemed to hold its breath. And Xu Yan, who had faced countless challenges without hesitation, found himself unable to do anything but wait, his thoughts restless, his composure fragile in a way he would never admit aloud, until at last the cries broke through the silence, not one but two, clear and strong. And when he was finally allowed inside, when he saw Yuchen resting and the two small lives beside him, something within him stilled completely, the weight of everything they had been through settling into a single undeniable truth, as he asked quietly if they were truly theirs. And Yuchen, meeting his gaze with a tired but genuine smile, answered simply that they were. In that moment there was no past left to haunt them, no shadow strong enough to reach what they had created together, only the quiet warmth of a future that no longer needed to be fought for, because it already belonged to them. The house had only just begun to settle into a rare, fragile quiet after the long hours of tension and relief that followed the birth, the soft cries of the twins rising and falling like a gentle rhythm in the room, while Shen Yuchen rested against the pillows, his strength not yet fully returned, but his mind clearer than it had been in years. And Xu Yan sat nearby with an intensity that bordered on absurd, his entire attention fixed on the two small bundles, as if the slightest lapse might cause them to disappear, his large frame awkwardly stiff in a way no battlefield or business negotiation had ever made him, while the rest of the family moved more softly than usual, their voices hushed, their footsteps careful, as though afraid to disturb the fragile peace that had finally come to this household. It was precisely in that quiet, in that rare moment when everything seemed to align just enough to feel almost unreal, that the sudden crash shattered the stillness so completely that for a brief second no one even understood what they were hearing, the door flying open with a force that made it strike against the wall with a loud, echoing thud, and a voice breathless and urgent, cutting through the air with a dramatic desperation that felt entirely out of place in such a setting. "Wait!" The entire room froze, every movement halted, every gaze instinctively turning toward the entrance where the second brother stood framed by the doorway, his appearance so chaotic that it took a moment to fully process what they were seeing, his wedding robe still bright red yet visibly disheveled, one side slightly loose as if he had thrown them on in a hurry, his hair only half secured and already beginning to fall apart, his chest rising and falling rapidly as though he had run all the way there without stopping, his expression caught somewhere between outrage and disbelief as his eyes darted across the room before landing on the scene before him. Behind him, almost hidden by his overwhelming presence, stood a young girl dressed in matching wedding attire, his face flushed deeply with embarrassment, his head lowered so much that he could barely meet anyone's gaze, his hands nervously clutching the fabric of his sleeves as though wishing he could disappear entirely into them. And it did not take more than a glance for everyone to understand that this was unmistakably his newly married bride. For a long moment no one spoke, the silence stretching in a way that felt both heavy and utterly absurd, until the second brother suddenly raised his hand and pointed dramatically toward the bed, his voice breaking through the stillness with renewed force as he shouted, "You!" though it was unclear who exactly he was accusing. "You already have children?"
The question hung in the air, ridiculous, and yet delivered with such conviction that it almost demanded an answer. And when none came, he pressed on, his disbelief only growing stronger as his gaze moved rapidly from Shen Yuchen to Xu Yan and then to the twins, his expression becoming increasingly indignant with each passing second as he exclaimed, "You just got married and now you already have twins?" His voice rose at the end, as though the situation itself had personally wronged him, and then, as if remembering something even more important, he turned abruptly to glance at the shy girl beside him before adding with equal urgency, "We literally married 3 days ago. I just went to visit my in-laws, and now I come back and the babies didn't even wait for me to return." For a moment there was nothing but stunned silence, the kind that comes not from shock alone, but from the sheer impossibility of what had just been said. And then, almost as if the tension could no longer hold, the reactions began to ripple through the room one by one. The eldest brother lifted a hand to cover his face as though trying to physically block out the absurdity. The sister choking on a laugh she clearly could not suppress, and the sister-in-law turning away entirely, her shoulders shaking as she tried and failed to maintain composure. The mother, however, reacted first with alarm rather than amusement, her voice rising as she hurried forward. "What are you shouting for? Have you lost your mind? The babies'll wake up."
Hey, don't forget to give thumbs up, give me a comment, and subscribe to see part 2. Now let's get into the story.
But even as she spoke, the inevitable had already happened. One of the twins letting out a soft cry that quickly escalated, followed almost immediately by the other, their voices overlapping in a way that instantly filled the room with a new kind of chaos. Xu Yan reacted as though struck by lightning, shooting to his feet with an expression that combined panic and irritation in equal measure as he turned sharply toward the second brother, his voice low but fierce as he snapped, "Lower your voice." But the second brother, far from being deterred, seemed only more aggrieved by the situation, his brows furrowing deeply as he threw his hands up in frustration and repeated, "I just got married," as though this fact alone justified everything. His tone shifting into something almost plaintive as he added, "And you're already ahead of me. How is this fair?" "No one asked you to compete," the sister shot back between bursts of laughter, clearly unable to take him seriously any longer, while the shy bride beside him tugged gently at his sleeve, his voice barely above a whisper as he tried to pull him back. "Let's go, please," his embarrassment now so obvious that even the children in the room seemed to sense it. But the second brother stood his ground stubbornly, shaking off the gentle pull as he declared, "No, this is important," though what exactly he hoped to achieve remained entirely unclear. Amidst the growing noise, Shen Yuchen, who had remained quiet until now, finally let out a slow breath, his gaze steady as he looked towards his brother. The faintest trace of a smile appeared on his lips despite his exhaustion, as he said simply, "Congratulations." The words seemed to catch the second brother completely off guard, his entire expression freezing as he blinked once, then again, as if struggling to process the shift in tone. Huh? He managed after a moment. Yuchen met his gaze calmly, his voice gentle but carrying a quiet weight as he continued, "You're married now. You have a wife, so start learning some patience, all right? Idiot." For a heartbeat, the room fell silent again, the word lingering in the air in a way that felt almost surreal, and the second brother stared at him, his mind clearly struggling to catch up, before his expression shifted abruptly, outrage returning in full force as he sputtered, "Wait, did you just call me an idiot? You—" But whatever argument he intended to launch never truly formed, because the tension had already broken completely, laughter erupting around him in a wave that swept through the room with unstoppable force, the sister leaning against the wall as she wiped tears from her eyes, gasping, "He forgot why he came," while the sister-in-law added between laughter, "He came all this way just to complain." Even the eldest brother shook his head, his earlier composure gone as he muttered under his breath, "Idiot," echoing the sentiment with quiet resignation. The mother, regaining her senses, quickly moved to pull the shy bride further inside, her voice softening as she spoke kindly. Come in, don't mind him, you must be exhausted." And the young girl nodded quickly, still flustered, clearly relieved to be rescued from the situation. Meanwhile, Xu Yan found himself completely overwhelmed by the sudden escalation, crouched awkwardly beside the bed as he attempted to calm both crying twins at once, his usual confidence nowhere to be found as he muttered under his breath, "Why are they both crying now?" "Because you're panicking," Yu Chen replied quietly, watching him with a faint amusement that softened his features.
I'm not panicking, he insisted immediately. You are. I'm not. Their exchange, so familiar and yet so different in this moment, only added to the chaos, and the second brother, still unwilling to let go of his grievance, pointed at them again as if presenting evidence. See, this is exactly what I mean. Get out, snapped Shu Yan without looking up. No, came the immediate, equally stubborn response. The noise rose again, laughter, protests, crying, overlapping voices filling every corner of the room, turning what should have been a quiet recovery into something lively and uncontrollable. And yet, in the middle of it all, Shin Yuqin found himself sinking back slightly against the pillows, his gaze moving slowly across the scene before him, taking in every detail, every expression, every sound. This time, the chaos did not suffocate him, did not press down on him like it once had, because it was no longer born from fear or misunderstanding or cruelty, but from something far warmer, something imperfect and loud and undeniably alive. And as he watched Shu Yan struggle, still loud, still stubborn, still exactly as he had always been, a quiet sense of peace settled deep within him. And as his eyes slowly closed, his thoughts soft and steady, only one feeling remained. This was enough.
Thanks for watching.